Hey guys, we're gonna get started. Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Hello. Hi. Welcome to Do I Need a Manager? I'm Kate Bradley. I'm gonna be the moderator because Charles is detained. And thanks for coming. How are you? So I guess we can all start by introducing ourselves. So Jim, why don't you go first?
I'm Jim Barber. I'm from Atlanta. I've been a manager at some parts of my career. I've been a client at others. And now I produce records and I consult, and I'm here because Charles asked me to be here.
I'm here because Charles asked me to be here too. So I'm Brad Hunt, and I manage in radio and father children, which I found out in the last panel. I'm not actually doing a very good job with them, but it's okay. I don't feel bad about it.
Rico Brooks, president of Block NT, partner 9196 Management.
Yeah, and so I'm Kate. I have been in radio for ages, most recently as the music director for the Loft at XM Satellite Radio, and now I have my own company, one division of which is a guided do-it-yourself consulting company for independent artists. So we sort of pseudo-manage artists and teach them how to be business people. So do you guys have questions that I mean, I guess my answer to do you need a manager is not necessarily. Depends on, who you are. It's really an individual case-by-case basis, how much money you have, how busy you are. I mean, there's the number one reason to have one, I think, is to, these days, unless you're flying at 30,000 feet, like Trent or Jill Sobule or whatever, would be to delegate the work. I mean, it's just a crazy, ridiculous amount of work. And just like in any business, you need a COO to be doing stuff for you. So most of the artists I work with, it depends really, I mean, also in your talent level, where you are in your career, and, what's going on. And then even, I mean, I guess, just deciding who that manager is going to be is a whole other question I guess we can talk about later. I can recommend these guys, of course. But I think, why don't you talk for a little bit, Jim, about what, do you feel needed by your clients?
I think a lot of people need a manager so that they don't have to deal with the grind of promoting themselves. And but I have a very old school attitude, I think. I've worked with a lot of young artists. I produce some who spend a lot of time figuring out what they're going to put on their MySpace blog. And I don't think you can write and sing and play music as well as I would hope you would. Some people are talented, some people are multitaskers. There are other artists who really need somebody to block out the rest of the world so they can be irresponsible and play music.
Yeah, I mean,
we live in it's a time when the business model seems to be evolving so that artists should now be a cross between managers and artists, which would make, if you're good at it, makes the idea of needing a manager less relevant.
Thoughts?
Aspirin?
Okay. I think there's a couple different things when it comes in regard to whether or not you need a manager. I think one of the things is, are you prepared to partner with that person? And I'm talking about, I mean, it's not a marriage because, that goes through a whole divorce and it gets ugly and, you have kids and all that. But it's, from a practical standpoint, it's the thing you can equate it to. Other people would suggest it's more like a psychoanalyst. I mean, you're probably, you should have a degree in social work or something like that, so at least you could get paid an hourly rate for doing it. But I think one of the big questions before you ever get involved in this is, are you prepared to partner with somebody? I mean, my guys, it's every day. I mean, it is, and it's every day, not just in relationship with, not just dealing with publishing issues, not just dealing with touring issues, not just dealing, I'm talking about, the kids, they're a pain in the ass, and one smoking pot, and it's fine, what do I do? And she got tossed out of school, and you're dealing with a lot of issues. Artists are, it's by nature. I'm not an artist. I play the radio. By nature of it, it's a wonderful creative thing they go through. But I find from a lot of different standpoints, from very practical stuff, they're not really too great at it. I mean, it's not what they're asked to do. It's not what they're required to do. So I think, that is the big moment in time now. Big question to ask is, am I prepared? This is a guy I'm going to get married to. Or this, and I know that sounds a little gay, but it's truly, it is a marriage. The other thing, by the way, and I will say this, in regard to management, I think managers need that. Just like a shrink talks to another shrink, they finish up with, after they've become a sponge all week, and, they've taken in all of that, and then they've got to go unload on somebody else. Managers kind of need that too, and unfortunately we don't do that. But, I mean, we should.
Are you saying managers need managers?
Managers do need managers, by the way. And that's a subject which we'll take up in a little while, but I'm finding more and more, I mean, these guys who, you looked up to and you respected for years, you realize, boy, God, the bus left and you missed it. I mean, it was just like it went, and you're standing on the curb going, huh?
I think, especially some things that artists make mistakes about now more than ever is that if they get a manager, they suddenly don't have to do the work, and that may have been the case in the past, but now, I mean, your personal brand is really important, getting it out there, and that's something that you have to be doing as an artist. So the work doesn't stop, So even though you might have a manager who's now your advisor and someone on your team helping you, you still have to bust your ass. And I mean, you don't have the luxury of just being a musician anymore. Period. I mean, you have to really be 65% of your time, if not more, is being a business person, yourself, and taking on a lot of the tasks that, a label or a publicity team or all those things, used to do for you in the future. But now, I mean, most of the people that I'm working with, if they have that situation, those people, their label, are saying, you're a part of this. You're going to have to be doing the same work we're doing for you, essentially. It's got to be coming directly from you. So I don't think, I think your life doesn't get easier. I don't think that there's necessarily less work if you have a manager. But you do have, it's certainly nice to have someone you can trust, which is the main thing. But it could be me. As opposed to you.
You keep looking at me for validation on this stuff.
No, I know I'm not going to get it. I'm trying to create controversy.
Well, I think that this means no Bob Dylan or no Prince at this point.
I don't think there's going to be anyways, frankly.
Okay.
But that's a tall order.
I think in my history, I'm always appreciative of artists who have, at first when you start out, I think artists should go out there and see how, because some people just don't get it. Some artists don't get it, but once you go out there and you're dealing with once you get to a certain level of dealing with whether it's recording studios or dealing with booking agents, touring agents, promoters, talking to your new media person or the publicist, once they deal with that, and then they appreciate wow, I need someone that can help me manage this. So when you look at your team, a manager is part of that team. But I think it's very important starting off for artists to try to do some of it themselves, so they can kind of at least know if you do bring someone in, okay, this is kind of right or this is kind of not how it's supposed to go. Because a lot of artists don't appreciate the management team that they have because they never actually tried to go out there and do it themselves. Then when they go do it, some try to do it themselves and they go, boy, this is really a lot of work. So then they go, oh man, you really did do a good job. So just in my history, I've started, and I always say, I want them to do it themselves so they can see how much work it really is. Yeah. So, yeah.
I have a
be my client, and I'll help you. I mean, I think that it's sort of like everything else. It's a name game. It's who you know, so you're doing the right thing. You're coming to places like this and glad handing people. And I mean, whether it's a manager or whoever, I'm sure you know people you can trust and ask. And I would just get as much information as you can, do tons of due diligence, look them up everywhere you can, ask other bands who, they work for, what's their experience been like. Just, you're interviewing them. Of course, then they're going to interview you, essentially as well. But, once you find the person you'd like to be yours, you have to pitch them, essentially, like get them to want to work for you. And I think a big factor for most of the managers I know want to know that you're out there busting your ass. So, like, if they see that you're a hard worker, I mean, everyone's a dollar sign, hopefully, right? And so, I mean, they're going to be looking to think, like, how much money can you bring into me? And if you're the kind of guy that's, like, got 3,000 people on his newsletter and you're shaking your ass out there all the time, then I'm more likely to want to work with you as well. You're going to make my job or, Jim's job or whoever is that much easier.
I think in looking for a manager, 3 things you should look for, not necessarily in this order. You should look for someone who's passionate about what they do, someone who has connections and relationships, and someone who has if you may need finances too, because a lot of times when you're starting out, managers actually fund sometimes, not always, but sometimes they're funding recording and certain costs that are recoupable, So, but the thing on the flip side, I know you asked, do you need a manager? I'm always asking myself is, do I need another client? And my criteria is simple. The way I do it, it's not always. I mean, this is the formula that tends to work for me. Is I look at whether they're touring. If they're not, if they're not signed, then of course there's an incentive there. But if they're not signed, then are they touring? Because in management, it's not guaranteed, that you're gonna make money. So you could do all this work and you still may be in the hole. So I have to look at like, how can I cut my losses, but at the same time. See what?
He didn't share.
Okay. But at the same time, what are some of the things I base it? So I look at it like that.
So Charles has entered the building.
Big Charles.
I was in the building. I just had to be in another room.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay. I talk loud enough.
Okay.
I don't need to. What? Oh, you want me to talk into
For the video.
All right. I'm Charles Dreby. I'm a manager and an attorney. I live mostly in Atlanta, Georgia, but also in New Orleans. And mostly I manage roots-based acts, blues, gospel, soul, that sort of thing. So that's about me.
So, Charles, we're just sort of discussing like criteria for, finding a manager and how do you do that, which.
I would say there's basically 2 kinds of clients that I would look at as a management company. One would be someone with an existing income stream, and I think I came on in the end of what Rico was saying here, which is, I run a company. I got 5 employees. We got an overhead of, 15, 20 grand a month. I can't run that on fumes. I have to have something to run it on. So number 1 would be if I can find an act that has an existing income stream, because we're a percentage of that stream. So there's that. Number 2 would be if you just find something that you absolutely fall in love with that, my criteria for that has always been, because first of all, there's a lot of acts I see that I fall in love with, but then you have to judge whether or not this act could become that money-making act. And sort of my criteria for that has always been, can I see this act on like Leno or Conan or something like that? It's like if I look at an act in a little club and I go, could I one day see this act on Leno in 5 years from now? And if the answer is yes, then I think that pretty much answers your other questions. Will people like them? Will people pay to see them? Will people buy their records? That kind of stuff. So that's sort of my little litmus test there. Also, in addition to just straight management by the percentage, on a 3-year type contract, which is sort of the standard, management deal that I do. Our company has started sort of doing management by hire in certain instances. For example, an artist will have a record slated to come out 6 months from now, and they have a label, but they don't really have a manager. And I think, as all the people up here could attest, there's a whole lot of things that go into that. There's, the hiring of a publicist, there's lining up of radio people, there's a bio, there's a photo shoot, there's just a whole lot of things that have to be coordinated. There's coordinating with the label and the various people involved, the agent. There's lining up, hopefully, a tour that will start with the release of the record and go for the next, somewhere, extensive touring within the 6 months following the release of the record. And so we've had some situations recently where we just said, look, people are used to paying a publicist X dollars a month. If you want to hire us and we think we can help you, which is another important criteria, then maybe you pay us X dollars a month and we help you coordinate all of these things and wrap this thing up so that when your album drops, there's a whole lot going on behind it, because really, we've talked here in other panels about how the CD doesn't mean so much anymore, but it's still an excuse for somebody to write about you. It's still an event. Otherwise, you're just sort of percolating along, and there's not much to say. And I know Jim, manages and has produced a record on this band, Driving and Crying. They've sort of been percolating along for years, but now there's a record to talk about, and it's getting a lot of...
They fired me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In 1993, and I swore I would never have a management client ever again. So I'm a partner of theirs.
Okay.
And no one's allowed to call me after dark. So I would not consider that a management situation.
No, because if you're a manager, they will call you after dark.
But this,
However, you did produce the record.
I did. I put the whole deal to release the record together, and I'm helping them coordinate it. But I'm doing it as a
advisor.
That's a good word.
Partner. But my point, the point I was getting to really is that it's the event. Now there's something.
Well, there's a lot. They've booked dates in a lot of towns where they haven't played in 15 years because people say, oh, there's a record coming out.
Right.
Now there's a reason for. Now people will come see them play in Valdosta, Georgia, or
right.
Dothan,
Well, that's
Alabama.
the point I was making, is that even though maybe we're not going to sell 1 million CDs anymore, or I know at one time they sold hundreds of thousands of CDs. They just because of the market, they're not going to sell that many CDs. But there's still this event of them releasing a CD and a reason to have a tour, and there's a profile to be gained.
So, as you were talking, it was just, one of the unfortunate things is it's kind of a catch-22. I mean, a lot of managers won't work with you if you don't have some of these things in place, like a publicist or a booking agent or whatever. And so it's hard because you're always sort of chasing getting at least one of those things, going on, which is why a lot of managers are usually like friends of the band. It's a really good friend of yours who happens to be a fan, who has some emotional skin in the game in your success. And then, hopefully can get you to a place where real people will, start taking a look at you. So, that's sort of an unfortunate deal. I mean, you really... Go ahead.
Something that you were talking about and something that Mr. Rick, and I guess my question may be a twofold question, because I'm an attorney too, and I tell you, I can't find time to manage any of my clients, which also goes to the state, this Michael Jackson thing out there, which has really kind of led to a lot of experiences we're able to really watch. Particularly with Dr. Conrad Murray, do you find that being a manager, sometimes it may be detrimental to be that close to a band or to the band members, because sometimes you get to that ethical area where you can tell them, okay, we can't smoke weed on the bus. We can't smoke weed at all. But because of your relationship with the band, or because this is a high-income generating band, that you can find yourself wavering that ethical guideline. And the second question is, I'm beginning to see, particularly with the artists that I deal with, a more need to either have a separate attorney traveling with the band, or that the manager may need to be an attorney as well. Because I can tell you, some of my artists are running into a lot of stuff. Because I'm also a prosecutor. something else going on illegally, or the girl was in the hotel after. This could totally mess up the concert tour. This could cause litigation from you not being able to get the venue the next night because he's still in jail. So what can you all address those issues, because I think that's very important in choosing a manager.
I
You
think
can have legal contact to the city you go to.
I think some of that could be alleviated with having a good road manager, like, cause I know Charles, you're not on the road with some of the acts, and sometimes I go, sometimes I don't. It just depends on how many of the acts are out there. But you're right, and I made a decision from day one that I'm not a drug dealer, so don't ask me to go buy drugs, and I won't get them for you. What you choose to do in your room. You're still a person, you see what I'm saying? And you're a grown man, you're an adult. Because it's funny, because me and Charles was having a conversation yesterday. It was more about economics and bans. And when you say, hey, you need to rein in the spending.
I'll say this, is that if you were going to ask me what's more important, a manager or a lawyer, and I'm just going to say I'd say a lawyer. Like, if you had to choose, get a lawyer first.
No, what were you going to ask?
I came up in the alternative underground culture in the 80s and 90s, and I'm a lot closer to a lot of the drama that went on with those artists than I would have liked to have been. And it's an unbelievably difficult decision. Are you interfering too much in your client's life? Most of my friends who went through it, at some point you just have to choose not to know.
And I guess I brought up Dr. Conrad Murray because if you read what's going on now, he succumbed to Michael Jackson's demands to give him the medicine.
Well,
So at that point, do you succumb to
Michael Jackson was in the premier division of drug-seeking behavior, and when you are working with someone who can function at that level, you have absolutely no idea who they've charmed into what, and you either walk away completely or you try and make the best of the situation that you're in.
as a manager, do you walk away from $100,000 a year off one client? Can you walk away from it? He's the bulk of their income, and you're telling them this girl is too young to bring your hotel room, or these girls, or not that you don't smoke weed or you don't deal the drugs, we can't have drugs here.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have an obligation as a
I think
manager to do
as a
that?
manager, you call your lawyer. And
Wow.
frankly,
You know what? I'm just trying to think. I don't have a management, I don't think any of my clients have a lawyer. They have business management, but not one of my clients has an attorney. And I also don't have any contracts with them either. It's all handshake deals. I mean, it has been, and I have 13 years with one, 12 with another. But I got to tell you, there's certain guidelines. As a manager, I don't touch the money. I mean, that's rule number one. They got a booking agent, I don't want to see the money. You know what? I mean, your business management office, they pay me my commission. I don't want to touch it. That's number one, because guess what? Caused a lot of problems in the UK. You had a lot of guys over there that got smoked. I mean, Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones. I mean, it was on and on and on, because all of a sudden the managers controlled the dough. I mean, that was a major problem. But as far as a one-on-one relationship with the client, no, I don't want to be their best friend. I mean, that's never been, and guess what? I probably wouldn't be ever considered, I mean, by any of them their best friend. When I'm talking about a relationship, and the relationship, one-on-one relationship, is not to nurture. Most of the time, it's like, it's shit they don't want to hear.
and why would you hire a manager who wouldn't do that? I mean, if I am the CEO of my company. If I'm going to hire somebody to do a job for me, I'm going to make sure as hell that I'm hiring the kind of guy or girl who has a backbone and will do the job. So you should be picking a manager who's a ball buster, who's a bulldog. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah, but since when does an artist pick some manager who's good for them?
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. I will say this on that issue, though. My primary management client is the Blind Boys of Alabama, and they are elderly, blind, and primarily diabetic. So our primary drug issues center around insulin and diabetes medication, and I really don't have those ethical problems, so I'm happy for that. We may have other ethical problems, primarily, well, I won't get into that, but they're not drug problems.
I have a question. I want to go back a little bit. The first time out as a manager, what, you know?
I got, but you know what? I will step up on this one, the first one. My first I was with record labels for 20 years. My position was to torture managers. I saw my job every day to go in and say no, no matter what the question was. I mean, and it didn't make any difference at what level. No, you can't have the tours. My first answer was always no, because if I ever said yes, it meant my negotiating power went out the window. So I'm saying my whole perspective on it was forget it. No, but I'm in Nashville one night. Steve Forbert, who I don't know, Romeo's tune, big hit 30 years ago, active on the road. He walked into at Andy McLennan's insistence, and it's a good cat, a really great cat. At his insistence, he walked into a place where I was in Nashville and took my car keys. And I'm staying at a place way out of town, and he just wouldn't give it back. Hours this bullshit went on. I mean, and finally it was like, man, I need the help. You got to be my, and that was the deal. I didn't want to do it. I don't know, Charles, did you want to do it?
What, to the manager?
Yeah.
Yeah, sort of. I was sick of being an attorney. That's how bad that was.
Yeah, I hear that.
I couldn't get an interview at a major label. I was a pretty cantankerous little college radio music director, and nobody wanted to talk to me when I graduated, and so the only way to keep my hand in was to manage local bands in Boston. And I wasn't good at it, but I was the only guy who would do it, and it took 2 or 3 years for me to figure out what was going on, and I think we all still speak to each other, so it turned out okay.
Yeah, I started with the Boys in the Hood in '04. It was a boy band that Block put together, but when you think of hip-hop rappers, you really don't think of them as boy bands, but that's really what they were essentially. And so I started with them because he basically put the group together, and he was like, I need you. Say what? No. He had his own label, Block NT, but a lot of which is like what labels are doing now. But Block was doing like with the 360, which some people agree with, some don't. He was doing that, when he first started, because he was like, okay, the manager is very important to. They can in a lot of situations the manager and or the lawyer make or break deals. I've been in situations with manager and clients and the lawyer. I said the lawyer, but they can, like labels have pulled deals away because they say I just can't deal with this guy right here. So, but basically put the group together and say, I need to put you right here in this position to help control what I'm trying to do.
Do you have a question?
I have a question. Dealing with hip hop. With so many artists, how do you decide who you're willing to manage? Because I'm pretty sure you get an onslaught of requests and people trying to get your attention.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Charles said and what I was saying earlier. Like if there's an income stream and if they're touring or if they have a situation, I see if it's something I'm passionate about too. I consider that.
There's definitely, I think, other than just knowing somebody or getting introduced, the lucky way, and there's certainly a way to be pitching managers, which is kind of the way, just like the white blanket way, which is the way you would pitch, anybody. So, like writing a good, email or just, there's, what you don't want to do is be like, hey, here's my record. My mom loves it, and I think you're gonna really love it. And you want to basically make a business pitch. Like here's what I do. Like we were talking about earlier. Here's how much time I spend on the road. Here's how many records I've been selling. Here's the email campaign I'm doing on Facebook or wherever whatever it's gonna be. Like so, you want to prove to somebody that you're a hard worker, and you want to show them professional stuff. Like if I see another record with a dude and his guitar on it, I'm gonna kill myself. Like it should. You want everything to look nice. You want to have a good one sheet and all those kinds of things, like it's a resume, like you're going in for a job.
I thought you picked up and learned to play guitar so you didn't have to make a resume. Music is supposed to be a refuge for people who can't function in straight society.
Not anymore. Not anymore. You know that. Yeah, if you want to make money, you're not going to be just a musician unless you get lucky. mean, that's like the basic deal. So if you want to, this should be a business venture for you, for all of you, just like any other business. So you're going to expect to take a loss for the first 2 to 3 years. You're going to expect to bust your ass and, working whatever, 67 hours, 70 hours a week, probably not spending a lot of time writing new stuff as much as you would like to. And it's all a risk. It's the hope, that you're going to get a break, that Jim's going to walk in and see you live and be like, holy crap, I killed and managed this person, or whatever the story is. So, I mean, I just think, I just want to keep part of the conversation here down, like, as how do we do it? Like I said before, not a Trent situation or even a Steve Forward situation or somebody that has, like, already some machinery working for them, but, like, how do you approach this? And I think you just try to imagine that you're, a little entrepreneur person, like anybody else starting a dry cleaning business or restaurant or whatever it is.
One thing's for sure, though, if you get the real wheels rolling, trust me, people will be coming out of the woodworks to say, can I manage? And even once you have a manager, there'll be people behind their back saying, hey, you should be doing this and you should be doing this, and I can do a better job.
And what's good is it doesn't have to be some large thing. So as long as you can show someone that your business is scalable, that is what's going to move things forward for you. So, for example, like one of my artists wanted to raise $500 for a tour, for a month-long tour, and he had a newsletter group of people on it were 3,000 people, and so he sent out a newsletter to 50 people, and I helped him write it, and he asked them for $500. Essentially, and he raised the $500 in 1 hour, and he sent it to the rest of the people, and he raised $3,000 in like 2 days, right? And it's because we put a lot of work into what exactly we wrote, and we kind of set this up.
Are you worried about committing a securities violation then? If you didn't do the paperwork correctly?
So the point is, $3,000 is not a lot of money, but it's a scalable thing. I mean, that was impressive. Eventually got him a manager on a record label within the following 3 months, and some press in the Boston Globe. But I think you guys can shoot, whether it's just achieving 1,000 fans on Facebook. Only 5% of Facebook fan pages have 1,000 or more fans. Or having a newsletter with 3,000 people on it, or whatever the thing is that you can demonstrate to somebody, like, look, I got something going on here that's worth your investment in me.
I will say this, though, to your point, is that, different people have different goals, and, one of the things that I personally like about New Orleans is that, in New Orleans it's not necessarily the same goals as it might be in the rest of America. And I know, for example, Kermit Ruffins, who is a local trumpet player, beloved, everybody loves him, and the guy works, 5-6 nights a week. People are always coming in there going, man, you should be touring, you should be you could be big. And he's, but I think his philosophy is, hey, I'm gigging, I'm making a living, I'm cooking barbecue in the back of my truck during my gigs, I'm happy, so I respect the hell out of that. I mean, he doesn't need to do more to feel like he's doing what he wants to do, which, I can't say that we've had the conversation, but from appearances, it looks like what he wants to do is make a living.
The smart point there, though,
doing what he does.
Setting goals. So knowing what your goals are and setting them, and whether that's with your manager or on the way to getting your manager, again, just like any other business would, you should set short-term and long-term realistic goals. I mean, I want to be a rock star playing to 2 billion people is not realistic at the moment.
I'm producing a band that I'm not sure if the piano player can find his way to the studio tomorrow for a horn session, and he's a genius.
But that's your problem, then.
It's not a problem. It's like
Drop crumbs.
he does not have a plan about where he's going to have dinner tonight. He's not emotionally or psychically equipped to do that, and
So who's like?
somebody else in the band will probably pick him up if they'll find him or they won't, and we may have a problem tomorrow. And that's, I didn't go to law school. I didn't become an investment banker because that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't put up with that guy myself, but.
But if he plays the piano part,
He's a genius.
And you're golden.
There's about a zillion other people who can do, who I'm sure can play that piano.
maybe not.
Who want to be on.
I think also Right. I think one of the things, though, also is assessment. You got to figure out what it is exactly. You know, managers, Charles and I are totally different. I mean, he likes boys. I'm not that keen. No, but it's you got to figure out where you're going with this thing. I mean, what are you looking for in a manager? And find out if that manager is the guy who's going to help you, the guy or girl, who's going to help you get to your goal. I mean, I think one of the worst relationships could possibly happen. One of the biggest things that you commission these days, because there's not record deals out there to commission like there used to be, and there's not a lot of other things out there to commission like there used to be, is touring. If you're in a situation where you're an act who, you know, guess what? You think your world revolves around doing 25 dates a year, then guess what? There's a lot of managers, in all honesty, it's going to be tough. The income stream, unless there's something else, someplace along the line. This is a business that operates on commissions. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. So I think you really have to decide whether or not this guy's in a position. As I'm looking at him, sitting here talking, he might be the greatest guy in the world. He might have a lot of great ideas and et cetera. But if he needs you to be on the road and you don't want to be out there, then guess what? It ain't going to work. And that's a big thing to keep in mind. The other thing is that, you know, if I'm a writer, if my principle is not as a performer but as a songwriter, does my manager understand publishing? I know that seems really fundamentally, but a ridiculously easy thing to say. But the bottom line is there is people that understand publishing and there's people that don't understand publishing. And the preponderance, believe it or not, it was funny. Earlier today, I was on the distribution panel, and the guy from Selected Hits was talking about the fact that, you know, we aren't looking at deals unless we get digital, all the digital for the world, by the way, which was mind-boggling to me. I mean, you just want to stand up and go, what do you know about digital? I mean, you're a passive situation. You're a distributor, record distributor. What do you know about marketing digital stuff? Well, similarly, same situation. Record companies for 40, 50 years wanted the publishing. The worst publishers in the world were record companies. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. There was normally within record companies, once you got past the early days of the entrepreneurial guys, King Records and Morris Levy and those guys, were all, by the way, criminals and crooks, but they knew publishing. I'll tell you that right now. They didn't know. These record companies didn't know anything about it. So if you're in a situation, you're a songwriter, principally a songwriter, you're with a record company who's your publisher, and your manager doesn't know anything, then you got the wrong guy. So it's just a fundamental, make sure when you're looking around, if you make the decision, I'm going to pursue a manager, make sure it fits your needs, not their needs.
One thing I wanted to follow up on there is just the partnership aspect, you know, of management is really, you know, the manager is not there to execute the artist's plan. The artist is not there to execute the manager's plan. You're there together to, you know, to partner and figure out the way forward. I mean, I've seen both situations, you know, where the artist wants to release, you know, 3 records, 1 a month for 3 months, and the manager says that's just insane, you know, but the artist wants to do it, you know, and so they're not on the same page, you know. I would have been the manager in that situation. And then I've seen it the other way around, where the manager is trying to tell the artist, you know, well, you need to blow dry your hair and, you know, do this and that. And, you know, and particularly when the manager starts interfering in the art, you know, you need to be more commercial or something like that. Personally, I really hardly ever make any comment to my artists about their art, you know, unless asked. It's just not really my realm. I wouldn't be working with them if I didn't already believe in their art. I do know that I did make a comment recently to one of my management clients about stage dress, and that wasn't particularly appreciated, so I'm staying away from...
I think if you're trying to work in the mainstream commercial rock business or R&B business now, having a manager who can act as your A&R person is critical, because there are very few people with the skills to do A&R employed at major labels anymore. So,
well, someone to act as your A&R, and if it's your manager, all the better. But
you don't expect the people who signed you to a record deal to provide that service to you anymore.
Correct.
You know what? That also, though, it gets back to the situation a little bit. I'm sorry. Honesty too. You got to be honest with these guys. You know, if you're going to act as a A&R guy, you got to, and all of a sudden a record comes in, you just can't. You know, the worst part, I know an artist, and the guy came to me after a while because he said he turned a record in to his management, and they didn't call him for a week. And I said, what were you thinking? He said, I thought everything in the world. And ultimately, at the end, what the management's decision was it wasn't a very good record. As a body of work, it wasn't particularly good. But their answer was not to call. Wow. I mean, how can you do that? The toughest thing in the world you can do, though, if you've got that relationship, is to tell your artists. You know, I mean, the guy's hanging there, right? I mean, he's like, he's just created it, and you go, it's not very good. I mean, we got to figure something out. I'm not telling you what to write, but I'm telling you there isn't a hit here. It's a tough conversation, but guess what? You got to have it. That's where the relationship, I think, really comes into play. This is a partnership between. You know, I mean, I'll tell my wife when I don't particularly like what she's wearing, and I generally sleep in another room for a good portion of the rest of it. But it's okay. I'll take the shot.
There's an upside, because if you're the person that tells the artist that you don't hear a single, usually they write a song about how much they hate you.
Right.
And
it's a hit.
And it's a hit. I've got two of those at least.
So this is going to sound sort of simple, but certainly ask for help. You know, don't be shy about asking the resources and the fans that you know you already have to help you make these kinds of decisions, or to help you introduce you to people, to help you figure out where to go. I mean, it could be, you know, if you know somebody in radio, for example, chances are they have been on the receiving end of managers' work, maybe. You know, some people calling them, or, you know, I've been on the receiving end of Brad's work for a long time, which is why I can recommend him to my clients, and I do, because I saw what he did. You know, I wanted to take his calls, always. And so I think that's it's a really, and it might be in the strangest places, but if you start to think of everyone that you know and how they fit into your business model, into your picture, and think about how they can contribute to what you're doing, I think you'll be surprised, because people want to help you in whatever way they can, and you just have to ask. So maybe you're not there, maybe getting a manager, like, you know, that's your goal right now, but for whatever reason, you know, you're not there, you can maybe delegate different tasks to, you know, these people who are your resources, whatever the thing is. But, like, be creative, you know, and you know, just
Hey, Kate, can I follow up?
just
on that?
pitch it. Yeah.
I think that, you know, it's intimidating to sit here and hear somebody say, well, you know, we don't really sign somebody unless they have an income stream and blah, blah, blah. And you may not be there yet, but I know for every person I manage, I have 2 or 3 people I'm keeping a tab on. You know, I'm checking out. I go see them every time I'm in the same town they're in. Maybe I'm in their hometown, maybe they're in my hometown, maybe we're in some third place, you know. Just keeping up with these people, because I like them. I like what they're doing. I'm keeping an eye on them. And I kind of keep this little list. You know, I've got, like, obviously, I've got my management clients, and I've got this list of sort of people I'm looking at, and I'm building relationships with them. I'm talking to them. I'm, you know, trading an occasional email with them. And then, you know, maybe one of my clients gets an opportunity that they can't do for one reason or another. There's not enough money, it's the wrong date, it's the wrong country, whatever. I start looking at that list, and I'm thinking, well, who on this list that I already like and know would I want to throw this to? You know, and that's the way, you know, it can percolate for years like that, and then it can, you know, can come together. But I think that sort of talking about what Kate's saying is just, you know, you don't, just because somebody says, you know, I can't manage you right now, doesn't mean that they might not be interested in keeping a tab on you and trying to help you out. I mean, I like to help people out. I got somebody that, you know, one of my clients got offered this tour to Australia, couldn't do it. I went to my, you know, to my other list, and I got 2 or 3 of those artists. Just, you know, I hooked them up with the person that was offering the tour. I didn't really, you know, it wasn't my deal. I just said, hey, this person is looking for someone to, they were specifically looking for a U.S. act to play at their festival. So I, you know, emailed these people, copied the person from Australia, and said, hey, maybe you want to look at these people. And that was it. But, you know, Maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but it's just a way to form a relationship with the manager.
So a good point there is to, assume that you're in it for the long haul. I mean, it might take a little while for Charles to call you up finally and be like, you've been on my list and now it's time to go. So, I mean, a lot of artists come to me and they're like, okay, I got a record, just did it, let's roll, I'm ready. And I'm like, well, not really. Like what, it takes a little while to build all these relationships, and sometimes it might be the next record, who knows what it is, but just, don't have expectations like, just, that might seem silly, but.
Kate, another thing is you sent out an e-blast recently saying, assume that I am lazy.
Everyone's a lazy idiot.
Everyone's a lazy idiot, right.
Including me.
Including me. And what her e-blast was sort of focused on was you as the artist just assume that I as the consumer am lazy. And I'm not going to do too much to try to hunt you down or whatever. I'm going to go to your website, and if I don't find what I'm looking for within like 2 clicks or 5 seconds, I'm gone. So you got to make it really easy for me. And I would say that the same thing with managers, with anybody really that is speaking at this conference is pretty much inundated, with stuff.
Well, the number one thing you should do is not well, if you put songs up on MySpace, find some other place to host your streams with a higher quality to send to producers and managers and publishers, because I'm not going to come listen to your music at MySpace. It's going to sound terrible and it's going to crash my browser.
Those are the latest emails. Like if somebody actually sends me an MP3, that crashes my browser too. Like this is what I was talking about before about writing a good pitch email. It's not like,
back to the point. The point is, just as the artist has to make it easy for the consumer, you better make it damn easy for the manager or the agent or whoever, because look, I do not have time to download the MP3. I don't, I'm kind of doing, I'm not trying to be, haughty, but I'm kind of doing a favor for the person that I don't manage. Or I only got so much time in the day. If you don't make it real easy for me, I'm going to delete that email and go, or I'm just going to, say, sorry, can't do it. That,
that includes like the CD, plastic, take that shit off. I mean, if I have to go find a pair of scissors to open your record.
Well, I'm just saying,
tough.
that's pretty tough, but as easy as you can possibly make it.
That's tough.
I mean, so at XM, I got 400 records a week. If it came in an envelope that required scissors, back of the pile. If it was an envelope that I could open easily and it wasn't plastic, back of the pile. I mean, it was just like, if those CDs that I have to open.
That's extreme, but hey, she's
That-
keeping it
that-
real.
That's what happened to my records.
I mean, you're sharp instruments anyways.
I mean, but it's the same thing. Like, exactly. Charles's point is really good, and so that might mean you have to be really persistent and don't be shy. Don't be afraid to go to somebody again who maybe has said no to you if you're just completely convinced that they're the person for you, because who knows?
But make it easy for them, because it's just, and if somebody emails me and says, I'm a rapper, I'm looking for a manager, I'm like, dude, I got a website. You haven't looked at my website. I don't manage rappers.
Right.
I know somebody who does, but I'm not going to take the time to tell you who it is. You know what I mean?
You didn't take the time to do your research.
I don't have time to do that. So just make it easy for the person that you're dealing with, and maybe it's asking them, what do you want?
Just
You want
took
an
that away
MP3?
from
Do
him.
you? Some people are okay listening to MySpace. I mean, some people aren't.
Well, but it's not. If it's the same click takes you somewhere else and it sounds better, it's
Yeah.
a good idea.
I'm with you 100%, but it's got to have to be a posted site, right? Not a MP3, not something you have to download.
The other thing, by the way, also, and this is, I think, it goes rule of thumb, and I know Charles and I go back a ways, and he's helped me out on some stuff, I've helped him out on some stuff, and et cetera. Don't forget, when you're going along and a guy's watching what you're doing and checking out, don't forget some of the things that they do. I mean, the biggest pain in the ass I got to tell you is you've had a conversation with a band, they've been hawking you forever, all of a sudden something comes up, you get them a gig or you get an opening slot or whatever it is, and then the next thing you know, it's not thanks, it's okay, so what's the next step? Where are we going? It's like, what are you talking about? I did you a solid. How about just, I'm not looking for anything other than a thank you. It's like, because guess what? I'm going to have a greater tendency next time around to look at that mental checklist and go, you know what, these guys they're pretty cool. I think I'll help them out because it's just, you got to
The
pay
underlying
attention.
theme actually is to assume that everyone in the industry has a major ego and you need to fluff it.
Right.
You know, and that's a
Fluffers,
really,
we got into
I'm
that
not
last
kidding.
night, didn't we?
You know, so yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did,
Fluffers
yeah.
are back, Jesus.
Fluffers.
Well, and it has very little time.
But yeah, and that stuff goes a long way. I mean, getting a handwritten thank you note from someone I've helped before, I'm going to help them again for free. You know, hopefully turn them into a client. Go ahead.
What's the maximum percentage that manager will get? 20%, correct?
I wouldn't say the maximum.
What's the maximum that you all work with? And,
Why, yeah.
to that question, what makes you go lower? What's the maximum rate?
I don't have a standard rate. I'll tell you right now. It's all over the place, and it is. It's based on what the client. I know the client can, circumstance. If I've got a client who's got child support payments, got 2 kids in college. It's got, I'll work around it. We'll figure something out. But there is no standard at this point. I mean, it's all over the place. I know guys at 10, and quite frankly, I know in this environment, there's percentages 30. I mean, they're 25, 30%.
It depends on, a lot depends on your genre.
Right.
I mean, urban music tends to have higher percentages from managers. Because I know as an attorney, I look at those contracts. Seems like the people with the least experience want the highest percentage.
Right.
But I'd say the standard management percentage is still 15%. But, you may have a situation with a client where they have some infrastructure. Maybe they have an on-staff publicist, or maybe they have they have some things that would take a load off of the manager. You know what I'm saying? So in that situation, I would certainly be open to discussing less than 15 if you're taking some work off of my plate. But I'd still say 15 is your standard, although I'd say in urban 20 is closer to the standard.
This again would be a good reason to make sure you have a lawyer over.
Are you saying that somebody pays you versus 15%? And you have a publicist as far as your fee?
No, I'm saying perhaps the person, the artist has some infrastructure that would take work off of the manager's plate, and therefore I'd be willing to talk to them about taking less than 15%. You see what I'm saying?
Would you consider being publicist part of your work then?
Well, that's an interesting question, really. That's an interesting question. Publicist has traditionally been something that the record label had. I mean, in the traditional model, the band had a record deal, and the record label had a publicist, and the publicist publicized the band, particularly around the release of the record, but also in between records. That's pretty much gone. Most labels don't even have full-time publicists. Most indie labels don't have full-time publicists. They just hire publicists on a case-by-case basis. So when your X number of months is up after your release, you don't have a publicist anymore. In my personal situation, I have actually hired a former record label publicist to be part of my management team. And that person provides publicity to our clients in between records and whenever they need it. Tour publicity, ongoing publicity. So that's actually an argument the other way. It's like, look, I'm not just bringing you a manager, I'm bringing you a publicist. So that's an argument actually that my fee should be higher. But I guess what I'm saying is, should the artist come to you with infrastructure, that you're not going to have to deal with, then it makes, it's just really all about how much time you have to put in. And if you have to put in a little less, then I'd be willing to talk about a lesser percentage. You see what I'm saying?
I think a good manager knows what they'll do for 10% or for 15% or for 20%. So if you should expect to get what you're paying for.
Your booking agent is usually separate, and they're usually 10%,
But
although they have been known to be 15.
Like if-
those numbers are going up. Just recognize the new scale. I mean, agency group and a couple of these are going to drop a bomb here pretty soon, and they're going to 15. And
Well,
that's-
the thing is that, it's It's like I talked to an agent, and this gets back to what somebody said about how many dates you're doing a year. I talked to an agent, and I said, this guy does, I can't remember. No, I think I told him he'll do about $100,000 or $150,000 a year in live touring. And he said, well, if that's 10 or 15 dates, then I'm interested. If that's 150 dates, I'm not interested. Because for the agent, it's just as much work to do a contract for $300 as it is to do a contract for $30,000. I mean, not really, but damn close to just as much work. And so it's like, if you're booking acts that are charging between $500 and $2,000, it's really hard, man. I mean, you do a contract for $500, you're getting $50 on that.
Yeah.
You end up getting paid a nickel an hour as an agent to do that.
I know some who actually take it up front. They take it as a retainer, like they do a retainer fee.
Well, some agents will say, I take a minimum of $100 a gig, no matter what you're getting paid. I don't care what the percentage is, but still, the standard is still 10%. But my point is that when you get up into the $30,000, $50,000, they're willing to live with the 10%. When you're down at the $500, the 10% becomes a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, there's been cases where like if promoters come to me and I bounce it to an agent, I just tell them just take 5%, and some of them are willing to do that because
Right, the referral, it's
Yeah.
off to them.
Yeah.
The other thing too, by the way, is there's another percentage that's thrown in there, which is a business
But
management
if you're
too.
in California, you can't take that phone call. Just
Right.
standard
Unless you're-
warning.
Right. Actually, unless you're
I- I'm-
bonded, there's almost no state where you can take that call, but you do. But there is also business management fees too. So the reality, which is generally a standard there, is about 5%. And it's 5% of everything across the board. So you can be, before, out of every dollar, just imagine, you're in a real potential of 35 cents out of every dollar is going.
Yeah.
And that's pre-tax.
Distribution.
There's,
That's gross.
yeah.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, could you briefly outline just a sketch of what a management, what an artist can expect out of a management, like for the 15%?
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. What can they expect? Huh?
Well, I meant on the different scales of what you get for your different percentages is how much grief the manager's willing to take, how much they're willing to listen to you complain about stuff.
Basically, what function?
But the functions, I think, are the same at every level.
Well-
It's just a question of how much you put up with. for
It's
the money.
actually-
Questioning specifically, like what does a manager
If
do?
I could
for
say,
you?
if I could say in one phrase, it's grow the franchise of the artist in every way possible. Publicity, touring, record sales,
Networking.
social network, just growing the whole franchise of the artist is sort of your job. But what that entails is often a mystery to the artist, for sure, and to the rest of the world. A lot of that entails making a lot of phone calls to make sure the people that are supposed to be doing their job are doing their job. You're calling the agent all the time. Going back to that example I gave where I talked about somebody hiring us for 6 months out before their record comes out. The manager is coordinating, if not setting up and executing everything that would go with that, like the photo shoot, like the bio, like the album cover artwork, the liner notes,
Think of it
the
as-
release date, the hiring of the radio person, the hiring of the publicity person, and then the tour outline. So 6 months before, if your record's coming out in September, in March, you're talking to your agent and you're saying, hey, agent, I want a tour that starts on September 15th. Here are the top 20 markets where we sold records the last time we had a record. I want to make sure we hit those 20 cities somewhere in the 3 months after September 15th. And here's an outline of a tour that I'm going to suggest to you, but you're the agent. And then if you don't call them, that just goes off into Neverland, and 3 months later you go, hey, remember that tour outline I sent you? So it's not just your job to come up with it and strategize it, it's your job to stay on it and call the agent and go, hey, Where are we with that tour thing? The following week. Oh, yeah, we're going to get to working on that. Well, let's nail down a couple of key dates and try to start filling in the blanks, whatever. And I'm just using that as one example because pretty much everything I listed is the same way. It's like, where are we on the artwork? Oh, yeah, we're working on that. You know, whatever. My kid got sick. You know, like, well, we need the artwork by next week. Where are we with the photo shoot? You know, just staying on things and kind of making sure that everything is flowing, you know?
Yeah.
An originator, an enforcer, and a prognosticator. You know what I mean? Like a couple of the bands that I work with perform in the performing arts center world. The performing arts centers are these places that, you know, have a season calendar, you know, like from September to April.
2013 now. It's like,
Well, that's the point I'm getting to. The point I'm getting to is that the performing arts people are starting to have their conferences now for the year of their season that will start from fall of 2010 to spring of 2011. So I've got to be talking to my artist now and trying to put together a package with another artist that we can pitch at these conferences starting now for a year from now into the spring of 2011. So I got to be looking way out ahead. I guarantee you my artist ain't looking that far ahead. And neither is my, you know, none of the people involved in this thing except possibly my agent, hopefully my agent, you know. So there's a lot of planning and forecasting and logistics, and you're the one that's looking that far out because nobody else is, and then it's making sure that gets done. That's one aspect.
For me, when I've been a client, the best thing about having a manager is when you sort of cross the line or go a little far in a meeting or a situation, the manager calls up and says, no, you don't understand. What he really meant to say was this, and they cover your tracks.
It's definitely the manager's job to take the heat.
Yeah.
I know I talked to a guy who
And having been a manager before that, I really enjoyed that part, making that happen for myself.
enjoyed taking the heat.
No, I enjoyed.
Letting the manager
But-
take it.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I know I talked to a guy. He said he used to manage Joe Walsh, and he said Joe Walsh was just like the friendliest guy, and everybody loved him. And they'd come up to him, they'd be drinking with him on the, you know, in the airport bar, and you know they'd go, "Hey Joe, I'm having a birthday party." He'd go, "Yeah, man, I'll play it, no problem." And he said, "My job was just always to shoot these people down, man. I had to go, sorry, man, Joe can't play your birthday party." And it's just like, man, we have that happen all the time. I mean, the artists, first of all, most artists are non-confrontational. Secondly, most artists aren't really good at like telling people, saying no. So they'll say yes to everything, man, and then you got to say no, and you're the bad guy. And if you can't be willing to be the bad guy, you really don't need to be a manager. And your manager should be someone who's willing to be the bad guy, because you just have to be sometimes.
Which is why, like, this is interesting, but some artists actually have their friends pitch their work for them when they're trying to get a manager. Like someone who they know is good at it and good at, like, I mean, people, I think, artists find it hard to brag about themselves, I think, to somebody. So that's a solution. If being aggressive isn't your deal, or whatever the thing is, like get someone who's on your team to like make that call for you, or to send letters and follow up for you, and see. I think it's okay to do that.
Well, they can be your friend, but they can't be like personally offended when someone
Right.
says, "You know what? I don't like this. I don't get
That's
it."
right.
As a manager, you got to go, "Hey, no problem, man. I just wanted to send it to you. I thought it was something you might like, but if you don't get it, I understand." You know, never go, "Well, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. This guy is great." Just say, "Hey, if it's not
first, and then you got to retract.
you can say that after you hang up the phone,
Right.
but
We used to, whenever an artist used to call me in radio to pitch their record, it was always the hardest thing, because just like with managers and radio, there's a lingo that's ours. So when I'm saying I pass, Brad knows what that means. Like,
and he doesn't keep arguing.
Right, exactly.
Wow.
So it could mean
Maybe a
there's
little.
no room on the list. It could mean I can't fucking stand it. Whatever it's going to mean. But then
I've
an
lived
artist
with a
wants
lot
to
of
know.
rejection in my life, but it's
You're
okay.
good. But it makes it really tough if you call me. I mean, I have to stop my day and tell you the deal, and then also feel bad or whatever the deal is.
Or just not take the call.
Or not take the call.
I'm going to throw in another subject immediately here, because I think as time is going down.
Yeah.
One of the traditional aspects that managers used to be interaction with record labels. In case you hadn't figured out as part of this conference, that may not exist for a whole lot longer. I have taken, right now, one of my artists is his own label. And quite frankly, the guy's making more money. But who do you think the label at the end of the day is? I mean, it's hysterical to sit there and go, well, it's his own label. I'm his label. I mean, it's not just everything else. I'm now doing, he's making the records. There's no ands or buts about it. I'm not in the studio. I play the radio at best. But the reality is, I'm his record label. I'm the guy who's out cutting the licensing deals overseas. I'm the guy who's, trying to figure out how many records we need to press, how many CDs we need to get out. And that's an aspect that you better start looking at when you're thinking about managers also. It's got to be, these guys are going to be your record company. And if you're going to be your record company, if it's going to be truly a situation where, the outlet is there in a position to be able to do that, then, you know what, the guy who you're going to work with, whoever that guy going forward, better have some experience and know a little bit more than just, well, I know the guy at the club, and I got this guy, and I got this guy, and I have a relationship with the label, and et cetera. Better have some hands-on record experience.
There are thousands of people with extensive major label experience who don't
that
have
are
a
doing
job.
nothing right now,
That's
by the
true.
way. They're working at Jiffy Lube.
Hey, so we've got about 10 more minutes, so I want to make sure we get to any lingering questions. Do you guys have any? Or, anything? Now's a good time. Not be shy. Can you say that question again?
I do. Charles, I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, it depends on.
I think the most worthless contract in the business is a management deal, because I've never seen anybody with a management
Enforce
deal be able to enforce it when the artist wants to get away from them. They might get a check, but I only think they get a check because the artist has enough character to pay something. So the only time I do a contract on any project I work on is when I'm expecting to collect money from a third party.
Yeah.
As a businesswoman, I would never do anything without a contract. I don't even do consulting or freelancing without a contract. I would just never do it. I mean, I would always have a lawyer look it over and make sure I have one. I mean, sorry, but I couldn't recommend that enough. Please do not hire a manager unless there's some sort of contract.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Not everyone's as nice as Jim.
Keep working the base. I mean, if you got a base of operation, it's for instance, you're working an area, it becomes one of those deals. Drop another rock and make the ripples go a little bit further out. I mean, people are going to get interested. Trust me. I mean, I got more guys call me because I'm on with radio stations. That's what I do 5 days a week. I'm on with radio guys, and it's a never-ending source of, oh my God, last night I went out and these guys played in Steamboat, and they were terrific, and it's unbelievable. And then all of a sudden I find out from the guy in Fort Collins that, well, wait a minute, they're down in Fort Collins playing. And then I find out from the guy in Colorado Springs, well, wait a minute, they're doing the same thing down there. All of a sudden, by the time I get to Durango, I figured out there's something happening here. So I always think it's one of those deals, grasshopper, throw another rock in and see how far that ripple goes. If you can do that, then that's your deal. And you can.
There's a lot more specific, obviously, answer to your question, which you know as well. So come talk to me afterwards. Cool. Yeah.
If the artist is underage, who do you sign an agreement?
I'll say that as an attorney, I can say that goes by state law.
Right.
In the state of Georgia, the parents have to be a signatory to a contract to a minor. And sometimes you have to get a court involved in that, to get the court has to okay that, the parents aren't selling the kid out or something. So it really is a state-by-state proposition, and the ages also, I think, vary state by state.
Any more questions? Any final thoughts?
The NY on the Yankees uniform stands for next year. Just remember that. Oh, that was. Okay.
All right, well, I guess that wraps it up. Yeah.
Whatever you say, boss.
Thanks, guys.
I gotta
Thank you.
go to the little stuff. Thanks for listening.
Mr. Lloyd, you were listening.
I think. How should everything go?
Have to be fair enough.
Oh,
Do you have to queue for the one?
I haven't run yet.